Welcome to the Productive Life podcast. In this episode, we are talking with Lexi D'Angelo, who is actually my business coach. And we're talking all about how to be productive while working less, having more fun, and getting off the burnout cycle. I've been working with Lexi for a few months now, and I love her perspective on business and life. It was so refreshing for me when I first started working with her, and I hope it will be refreshing and helpful for you as well. I'm so excited for Lexi to be on the podcast today. If you aren't familiar who Lexi D'Angelo is, she is the founder of the Integrative Alchemy Practitioner certification and is a Master NLP Practitioner, clinical hypnotherapist, and life and success coach for leaders who are ready to confidently facilitate miracle-style results that make them stand out and sell out. Welcome to the Productive Life podcast hosted by me, Megan Minns. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs who want to be more productive in their business and their personal life. Because as a business owner, your business and personal life are connected, and we can't talk about one without talking about the other. Each week, you'll learn about productivity, organization, personal development, self-care, business strategies, and more. And now, let's get started. Like I said in the intro, I have been working with Lexi for a few months now, and she is my coach. And she is such a breath of fresh air. I cannot wait for you to get to know her better. If you don't know who Lexi is, let me give you a quick introduction. Lexi D'Angelo is the founder of the Integrative Alchemy Practitioner certification and is a Master NLP Practitioner, clinical hypnotherapist, and life and success coach for leaders who are ready to confidently facilitate miracle-style client results that make them stand out and sell out. She empowers her clients to ditch the guru strategies that are sucking their souls and instead tune into their inner guidance and claim their unique magic so they can create fulfilling and sustainable success their way. And that means without sacrificing their purpose, passions, and priorities in the process. Lexi is known for helping her clients 2 to 10x their income, working half the hours, being 100% unapologetically them, and making their wildest fantasies their reality. And as a client of Lexi's, I can absolutely say that's a true statement. So now that you know a little bit about Lexi, let's go ahead and get the interview started. Hey, Lexi, I am so excited to have you on the podcast today and to introduce you to my community because you're my business coach and I've loved working with you for the past few months. And I'm just excited to get to talk to you a little bit more and explore a little bit more about your journey, how you stay productive, how you approach business and life, and all that good stuff.
Yay! I am so excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me. And I feel like we could talk for hours and hours. So
Absolutely.
This will be fun to see what we can produce in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I'm excited. Well, I would love for you to just go ahead and introduce yourself in your own words and tell us a little bit about what you do and what your business does, what you do in your business.
Yeah, perfect. So I am a Master NLP Practitioner. And for those of you who don't know what NLP is, it stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It's basically a modality to really model success and to make sure that you are creating the outcomes and the goals in your life that you desire. So that is something that I've been training for over the past few months, and I just got my master certification in that. I am also a master clinical hypnotherapist and master life and success coach for leaders who are really ready to confidently facilitate what I call miracle-style client results that make them stand out and sell out. And another thing that I have going on is that I am the founder of the Integrative Alchemy Practitioner certification, which really helps people to do just that, is to help them facilitate these miracle-style client results, both for themselves and for their clients. And as you know, I am a big believer in really empowering people to do things their way and to create fulfilling and sustainable success on their own terms. So for me, that means without ever sacrificing your purpose, your passions, or your priorities in the process. So that is something that is just really, really important to me, that there's no one way to create success. So I'm all about tossing out those cookie cutters and really figuring out what is going to light you up and how you can create this lifestyle that you are absolutely head over heels with.
I love that. So how did you get started on this journey? Because you used to do design and web design, right?
So it's been an interesting journey. I started out, I think, 6 years ago in the health coaching realm. And over the years, that transformed and morphed into then business coaching and life coaching and then spiritual coaching and then business coaching again. And then last year, I decided to dabble with branding and design because it's something that I've always done for myself, and that people would always reach out to me and be like, who's your graphic designer? Like, I need to work with them. And I'd be like, it's me, but like, I don't do this for anybody. And so I was like, you know what, let me just try it out and see if I like it. Long story short, I definitely know that I like to create designs for myself only and am definitely not a designer, and I love the coaching realm. So I am back in that and couldn't be more happy.
Yeah, I had a similar experience because I used to do graphic design and web design when I first started my business in like 2013. And I had a similar thing where I realized that I like creating for myself.
Yes.
But creating for other people adds this whole other dynamic that can be really challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, I don't know, like being a really creative person, I like to allow my creativity to kind of just do its own thing and take a life of its own. And so when I have somebody else saying like what they want and doing the revision process, it just felt very tedious to me. And I was working like 12 to 16 hour day. Like it was just crazy. And I was like, no, I'm not available for this.
Yeah, not anymore.
Not anymore. No.
That's awesome. So for people who aren't as familiar with you, tell us a little bit about how you work with people. I know you have your certification program, you do one-on-one. What all do you do in your business?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're like the exception. You're the unicorn. I don't really work with many people one-on-one unless it feels like it's a really amazing fit. So I keep my one-on-one practice very small, usually to like 1 to 2 people at a time. And other than that, I just work with people in 2 ways right now. So one is inside of Quantum Shift, which is a 30-day experience that helps people shift on an identity level. And it really helps them completely basically just redesign their belief system and their thought system and take on a completely new identity in terms of becoming the person who has the results that they already desire. So this is really for people who are looking to half the amount of hours they're working and 2x, 3x, 5x their income in a really short period of time. And it's very full on, but the results that people get are seriously incredible. So that is one way. And then the other is inside of the certification, which is a 6-month experience that teaches you to not only understand the theory behind how to, quantum leap and experience those miracle style results, but to also facilitate them with your clients. So that is a very immersive experience as well. And it really just transforms you completely from the inside out. And that's really it. Those are my 2 biggest areas of focus, which feels really good to say because I used to be somebody who was totally scattered all over the board, creating a gazillion programs left and right. So it feels awesome to actually streamline my focus and my energy into these 2 things.
I love that. And that's actually something I'm working on in my business too, because I've always created a lot of little things.
Yes.
And I'm really working on building kind of that foundation, which I remember you talked to me about in a coaching call a few weeks ago about how I should really be focusing on building things that are foundational for my business and can really help me get to the place I want to be instead of focusing on these small little classes and projects.
Yeah. And I think that's so important to note because I'm someone who's multi-passionate, and I feel like a lot of people in my, world are multi-passionate. And so when I say to them, like, let's streamline this, or let's just focus on creating this solid foundation, they're like, does this mean that I have to cut out all the things that I love doing? And no, it's actually not about that. It's about creating even more freedom for yourself. So I talk a lot about like the masculine and the feminine. And a lot of the times I really think that, and I think we have a very similar belief around this, how there are these masculine structures that actually allow us to create this amazing framework for us to then be playful and creative inside of. And it allows us even more creativity and more freedom when we're able to have some type of container to pour into.
I love that. And that is exactly how I believe too. And that's one of the things in my new group experience is it's all about building the framework that we can then intuitively play in and execute.
Exactly. So I think that we definitely have a shared belief inside of this. And I also just want to say too that I think that where I got lost in the past, like I said, I was creating new things constantly. I never ran a program twice. So with Quantum Shift, it's the first program that I've ever repeated. And what this created in the past was this endless cycle of burnout for me, where I was constantly creating, then tearing down, and then recreating. And I loved like the initial creation phase, but I just couldn't like stick with anything. And ultimately, like that didn't allow for me to build that solid foundation and to take off from there. I was just constantly burning myself out. So I knew that I had to really figure out like what was it that I was so passionate about and excited to pour my energy into and go from there. And I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but basically, like when I created Quantum Shift, it was something that I was really, really uncomfortable with creating, that I had a lot of fear around initially because it was so different than anything I had created before. But what ultimately I think made it so successful is that it was my highest level package, or it was my highest level of like expression and leadership and what I was truly meant to be teaching, regardless of whether I had seen anyone else be successful doing it before. And when I was able to follow that, there was just so much magic that then became part of my reality because of it, which was so cool.
Oh, I love that. And I think that there's so many questions I have from what you just shared, but there's a lot there. One of them I want to dig deeper in is how you overcame that sense of uncomfortable feeling and the fear, because I think a lot of people experience that when they're creating something new. You know, I've been struggling with that too, as I'm working on stepping into my higher level. And so it's really interesting for me to hear that you felt those things too. So how did you work through those feelings?
Yeah, so it's actually really funny. So what I was going to be putting out instead was a program about creating like your soul purpose work. And I was going to be targeting it to people who might have done more of like the straight-laced business type of thing, but their true passion was something that was a little bit more woo or taboo, and helping them actually step into their highest level of leadership and what their soul purpose was. And as I was starting to create the content for this, I was like, okay, first of all, this is the easy way out. This is my comfort zone. And how am I actually avoiding what my true calling is? And it made me realize that I didn't need to create this program, but I needed to take the messaging around it and apply it to myself and to my life. And it would have been totally out of integrity for me to launch this thing when I wasn't 100% stepping into what my true soul calling was. So it was kind of like a rude awakening. And I basically just kind of like, I don't know, I just had this epiphany of like, okay, holy shit, I actually need to do this for myself. And it's not about teaching people this right now. It's about doing it for me. And I just did a lot of journaling around this and got really clear on, you know, what would be possible if I decided to step into this new space. And then like, if I didn't do it, like what was at risk? What would I miss out on? And honestly, like I just had pages and pages of random journal prompts and questioning that I sort of led myself through around this. And of course, you know, working with my own coach too, until I ultimately just realized, okay, it's time for me to get uncomfortable, because with everything I had been learning, like I knew that the magic was outside of the comfort zone, and that if I didn't do this now, then I probably would have all these regrets. And beyond that too, what I was doing before wasn't working. I mean, it was working in the sense that like I was making money, but it wasn't the money that I desired. It wasn't like I wasn't working the hours I wanted to be working. Like it was semi-working. And so I almost had no other choice. It felt like it was either like, you know, I keep doing this and playing by these old outdated rules that all the gurus are speaking to, like, you know, you got to work hard for success. And like, here's the model that you have to follow, and be kind of unfulfilled. Or I could create my new rules and totally do things my way. And so that's kind of when I committed in January, just this experiment of, okay, for the next 90 days, I'm going to say fuck it. And I'm just going to see what happens if I recreate my rules and if I only do what feels good, if I allow turn on to be the compass that leads me to the next step constantly. And I just allow my true knowing to lead the way. And let me just see what would be possible if I, followed the schedule that I would love to follow and, what becomes available when I do this. And it was really cool to see the results of that.
Yeah. How soon do you feel like in that 90-day experiment that you realized this was working for you? Was it something that just a few days in kind of started to click, or did it take longer?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think in the first month, I was sort of just like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but this feels good. And so right now, it was at the point where I just needed a break. And so I had been working 16-hour days prior to that. And I was just so exhausted. And I was just like, you know what? This feels good to be able to walk in nature for a couple hours a day, to be able to read my fantasy romance novels. And I like this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
I know.
I binged like crazy. And so it was just so refreshing to have time for me. So it felt really good, but I didn't see necessarily not that I guess that month was a 10K month. So that was great, but it wasn't anything out of the ordinary for me. And it was just cool to see I can still create, at least 10K without really working. And I also was observing how people were reacting to what I was posting. There was way more engagement and people were really curious about how I was able to create this lifestyle where I think in January I worked, I don't know, it was something ridiculous, maybe 20 hours total. And people were just like, whoa, that's possible. And it started a whole new conversation and really got people curious about how they could create this for themselves. And that became a big talking point of my messaging.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's when I really started following you more intensely as well. I was going through a hard time in January and was really starting from a clean slate as far as what this business was going to look like, what my beliefs were, how I wanted my life to be. And I remember seeing you on Instagram stories talk about this and how much you weren't working in this experiment that you were going through. And it really piqued my interest, obviously to the point where now we work together.
Yeah.
And for me, it did exactly what you were just saying. It showed me that it was possible. It really opened up my eyes that the beliefs I had before, that you had to work hard and you had to work all day, every day and feel guilty when you're not. It showed me that it didn't have to be that way.
Yeah. So that's interesting because I remember when we first spoke too, you were excited that there was somebody doing this, but you didn't maybe fully believe it was possible for you.
Yeah.
And so what
you caught me.
Yeah. And so what I'm curious, I'm sure people would be interested in knowing what shifted for you to realize, because I'm sure people are listening right now being yeah, sounds nice, but that's maybe not available for me. So what shifted for you to believe oh, this could actually be a thing for me too, and not just her or other people?
That's a great question. I feel like it wasn't just this one day where it clicked.
Yeah.
I do think that it was having to experiment. I had to say it's worth trying.
Yes.
And seeing what happened.
Yes.
Because I didn't fully believe it until I started doing it. And then once I was actually living this way and working less and making decisions from a place of what feels fun and what's flowing, and it started to not only feel good, but I was able to actually take action and accomplish things and put myself out there in a new way. I started to just kind of get addicted to that feeling and it felt so good. And I did start to see results. And so I think for me, it was kind of clarity through action and just saying, what's the risk? Kind of like with your 90-day experiment, what's the harm in at least trying? And then once I started living that way, it kind of felt unacceptable to live any other way. Anytime I fall back into those old habits, it's just I'm not having a good time. And you notice it so quickly now where you're oh, this doesn't feel good.
Yes. I love that. And a big thing about this too is to get a little nerdy. It's our brain does not match our beliefs to fit our life. It matches our life to fit our beliefs. So the things that you see and you experience in your current reality are a reflection of the beliefs and that you hold to be true in the rules that you've created for yourself. So when we like subscribe to a certain set of rules or beliefs, our brain, like our reticular activating system is the thing that like basically sifts through all the information out there. It's looking for things in our external reality that are going to confirm our beliefs. So if we think like, oh, work has to be hard, or, like I can only be successful when I like work X amount of hours a day, our brain is automatically, without us even realizing, sifting through all the information that's coming in and finding proof of that, because the subconscious never likes to be a liar and it wants to confirm your model of the world. So when you start to change your beliefs, when you start to create new rules and train your brain to look for those things, then that becomes the new set of rules that it lives by. So it sounds like crazy and woo to be like, well, what are your new rules? And just create your new rules. And like, those will be your reality. But like, this is based off of and backed up by pure science. So I think like, if you're listening to this right now and the rules that you're living by just aren't fulfilling or aren't working for you, what do you desire your new rules to be? And to start to train yourself to seek proof that set of rules is actually possible, and you'll see things in your reality start to mirror that, which is so powerful.
I love that. How would you tell someone who maybe doesn't feel like they know where to go with that information? Yeah. How do they start training their brain? What's like one easy thing they could start doing?
Yeah. So I think like first and foremost, it's like getting clear on what your current reality is at this moment. So for example, like I do this thing called thought catching, where at any point you just become aware of your thoughts, because awareness is everything. And if we aren't aware of our current thoughts, then we can't change anything. So like as you go to do things that might feel uncomfortable for you, for example, so maybe it's when you're about to get on a sales call, or you're about to hit send on an email, or maybe you're about to share like a post or go live, I want you to just kind of become an observer and notice the thoughts that are coming up. So are they thoughts like, oh my gosh, like I'm not good enough, or who's going to care about like what I have to say, or I suck at writing content, or whatever it is. Usually our self-talk can be pretty brutal, at least at first, until we retrain ourselves. But notice like what those thoughts are and start to record the thoughts that are coming up for you. And then I want you to ask yourself, is this moving you closer to your desired reality or further away from it? And if it's moving you further away from it, think about what would be more empowering to think instead. And it doesn't have to be like this total drastic leap of, I don't know enough to, oh my God, I'm so smart and I'm great. It can be something a little bit more like seamless. Like, in the past, I used to believe that I didn't know enough, or my content, wasn't good enough. But now I'm currently learning how to really create powerful content, how to be more consistent, and how to take all the knowledge that I've learned over the past 3 years of immersing myself in the personal development world and using it to, create a bigger and better impact in the world. I'm totally pulling this out of my ass right now.
It doesn't sound like it. Sounds perfect.
Great. Perfect. So the idea with this is when you pre-frame it within the past, I used to believe, because we want to train our brain to be like, that's done, that's over, that's no longer true. And then we say like, now I'm currently learning how to, or now I'm committing to, or whatever it is, because then that's putting the focus on the solution and on what you desire, which is so important. So just a little practice like this can really change a lot. And just the awareness around what your current thoughts are, or what your current beliefs are, or rules are, is important to see and important to become aware of in order to change them.
I love all of that. I thank you so much for kind of breaking down how people can get started in becoming more aware. So another thing you mentioned earlier that I would love to ask you about, and I know you have a podcast episode where you have talked about this a little bit too. It's how you work from a place of flow with your business. And I would love to hear a little bit more about what that means to you for people who maybe don't know what that means, and then explore that a little bit more. So why don't you just start with just sharing what flow means to you?
Yeah. So for me, like it really just means being able to work with my own rhythm, whatever like that is for me and my own cycles. It really means being able to create this feel good experience where everything that I do is driven by just like total alignment. And it sounds like so, oh, like I live in the clouds, like la-di-da-di-da. And it's actually, it's not. It's just living from this place of things get to be fun. They get to be pleasurable. Like work doesn't have to be this grinding thing. It can actually feel so freaking good. Because in the past, the podcast episode was about how I used to work from this forced business model state of, okay, well, this is what the gurus said I had to do to be successful. Let me just take everything and like fit it and force it to fit this mold, even if it doesn't feel good or even if it's not in alignment with me because, you know, someone else said that this works, so I'm going to listen to them. Versus the flow, I think, is really just being so connected to yourself and tuned into yourself and allowing that to guide you each step of the way. So it's more of a shift from the moving away from the external environment and the external influences and tuning into your internal truth, I would say.
I like that. So of course there's parts of business, because I was talking to people at a conference I was at recently about how I've been living this same way too. Mm-hmm. And some of the questions I got were like, well, what about the parts of business that you just don't enjoy, but you have to do? Like this belief that there are things that you have to do, whether you like them or not. So how do you feel about that? Do you do those things? Do you delegate them? Do you change your perspective? How does that come into play?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think like first of all, we don't have to do anything necessarily. Like I really do think that every business model is different. So some people like say like, oh my God, you need to be so consistent with your content. You need to put it out X times a week. And even though I personally feel like I am consistent with my content, I know a lot of people who like have different types of content flows where they're super consistent for maybe like during a launch and then they kind of fade out a little bit and they do fine. So I just don't think that there's any one way to do anything to begin with. But for things that I feel like really do move the needle inside of my business, but aren't really what I want to be spending my time on, I absolutely delegate. So for example, with like the more nitty gritty tech stuff in terms of, you know, setting up my calendar links or making sure that people have like the replays to the trainings and stuff. Like I have my VA help me with that. Or a better example even is I love creating content initially, but I don't want to be the person repurposing it. So I have an amazing content creator / repurposer who will take my podcast episodes. She'll transcribe them. She'll write the blog post. She'll pull like little like Instagram posts from them. And then they like schedule them to go out. So I'm consistently having content out there, but I don't need to be the one that's like every day making sure it's scheduled and going out there. And if I do have an inspirational hit of something, sure, I can go and write it, but I'm not like at the whim of my inspiration to make sure I have consistent content.
Oh, I love that. That's a great example. Another question I have too about working from this place of flow, since we talk about productivity here a lot, and I love productivity. How does productivity work with this perspective of working from a place of flow? Does productivity have its place in that, or do you kind of feel like they're opposing?
Yes. No, I think that they work together completely. I think that when we are forcing things, when we're doing things that don't light us up, that it's not only draining our energy, but it's probably taking us like a lot longer to do things. I noticed with myself and with my clients that people will work for, I say work, quote unquote work, for 8 to like 9 hours a day, but not be more efficient. Like they are, you know, procrastinating around things, or they're scrolling through Instagram, or they just have such little energy and passion for what they're doing that writing a blog post takes like double or triple the amount of time that it would for somebody who's like really in their zone and excited about things. So for me, like I really do believe that like when I am so lit up about what I'm doing, like time totally warps. And it's not like I'm just haphazardly doing things. Like every day I like to think about, okay, like what is like the number one thing that if I were to complete today would feel so amazing. And I would just feel like, okay, yep, I feel accomplished and I feel, on task for whatever my big goals are. And so I usually do like 1 to 3, what I call potent priorities that are going to move me closer to whatever my bigger goal is. And just kind of creating the intention around that and that focus really helps me be more productive throughout the day, I find.
Oh, I love that. That's how I kind of approach the blend of them too, because I feel like when I'm in a place of inspiration or flow, I can create so much so quickly.
Yeah.
Like everything is just so much faster and so much easier. And whenever I'm in that place of like force or resistance, I notice a huge difference.
Yes.
It's wild.
Yeah. And that was just like, the inspiration for my podcast episode the other day, because I was sitting down to write a newsletter and it just like wasn't coming. And so I was like, I spent 5 minutes trying to like write it. And I was like, no, like I'm going to go on an 1.5 hour walk. I'm going to go listen to my, little audio book and get lost in another world. And so I did that. And then I came back. I felt so inspired, so lit up, and I cranked out that newsletter. I recorded 2 podcast episodes, and it happened so quickly versus if I had just sat at my desk for another couple of hours. Like I can just imagine how torturous it would have been to try and push it.
Yeah, I love that. And as far as other productivity tips or how you make the best use of your time when you are in that state of flow, are there any other things you do to help manage your time? Like, do you have themed days or set work hours, or do you really approach each day kind of based on what you want to do that day?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, honestly, I typically, for the most part, Mondays are days for me where I kind of just like get the week like all sorted out. I start to prepare some stuff that's coming up. And then I feel Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are typically more call heavy days or creation and content heavy days. And then Friday is pretty like loose and flowy. I also travel a lot. So Mondays and Fridays are usually travel days for me as well. But I think I'm at the point right now where there's not like strict rules around what each day is for. And there have been in the past, and that's felt really great in the past. But now I'm just way more just go with the flow and feel into things. And that works for me, but it might not be like the best solution for everybody.
Yeah, I usually think that it's pretty individual. For me, I find that having a framework and a structure gives me a good baseline, but then I kind of execute that based on how I'm feeling. So if I'm supposed to record podcast episodes on a Monday, but I really don't feel like it, then I'll bump it to another day that week and kind of let myself play in that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like so my podcast comes out every Thursday, and I would tell myself that I would record on Mondays or Tuesdays, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to happen. And I usually record like on a Thursday. And so I've just come to know like, okay, if I'm going to record in the morning of Thursday, then why am I scheduling this on Mondays and Tuesdays when I know that's not going to happen, or it's not important for it to happen as long as I'm getting it done. And so I think I think there is also a balance between, okay, like, well, what's procrastinating and what's just like your personal rhythm and cycle. And if things are working for you, then how can you rearrange your schedule to reflect that even further? But if you are procrastinating, then maybe get to the root of that and see like, what's really going on? Why am I procrastinating? Is it because I have this maybe like limiting belief in myself or my ability? Is it because that I'm really not aligned with the work that I'm doing? I invite you to get curious about like what's really going on there.
I love that. And then as far as I know, you mentioned earlier, you've been reading more fun romance novels, which you and I are always talking about and recommending each other books, which I love. That's been a huge part of my journey in having more fun as well. So just would love to kind of wrap this up with just any thoughts or tips you have on how someone can start working in this place of flow, incorporating fun things like whether it's reading a favorite book or doing some other hobby, just any other thoughts that someone listening can kind of take away and start maybe playing and having more fun in their life.
Yeah. So for me, what I noticed was when I was working and grinding really hard, like it would feel good for a while, but then I'd hit this space of burnout. And then I would completely flip the switch and all I'd want to do is read books and like work out or completely just turn off work. And so for me, I began to recognize like, well, if I actually make time for those things on a consistent basis, so it doesn't have to be every day that I'm reading these young adult books, but at least every few days, and that I'm constantly moving my body and doing things that are fun, the more that I weave that into my regular routine, the less burnt out I become. So I think it's like actually a proactive measure, and it's so important to your success to do things that are going to feel fun and to light you up, because it really does prevent burnout, and it creates it creates more fun. And who doesn't want more fun and flow inside of their workday if that's going to create a more effective work schedule and even better results?
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us, Lexi. I feel like it was so great to chat with you in this way, and then also get to share some of the stuff we've been working on and that you've helped me grow in and explore in my own business and life with my community. So I'm super excited to be sharing this with them and introducing you to my community.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah. Before we jump off, I'd love for you to go ahead and share, where can people find more about you?
Yes. So you can go to lexidangelo.com, or you can find me on Instagram. I'm always hanging out there at Lexi D'Angelo.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lexi.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really hope you enjoyed learning from Lexi and hearing about her perspective on how you can be more productive while working less and having more fun. Lexi actually has a free bonus just for you listeners. So if you are interested in her free training all about how to break through your next income ceiling, then be sure to click the link beneath this podcast so you can go over there right now and learn for free how to break through that next income ceiling. In addition to the link to that free training, you can also get links to Lexi's website, her social profiles, and anything else beneath this podcast. So be sure to click the link in the description to learn more and find out more about Lexi. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed recording this with Lexi. It was so much fun to get to chat with her and honestly learn more about her and her experience through this journey of how to work less and still make more money and have more fun along the way. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it, then please share on Instagram stories. And I would love it if you would tag both Lexi and I so that we could share it with our audiences as well. Thank you so much in advance, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Productive Life Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean so much to me if you would share your biggest takeaway on your Instagram stories or wherever you hang out. This helps me understand what you find the most helpful so that I can make more episodes and resources like this. If this podcast has helped you at all, please take just 1 minute to leave a review on iTunes so that we can help spread the word about the Productive Life Podcast with others who may enjoy it. And last but not least, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to get the latest episodes sent to you directly. To learn how to work with me one-on-one or get instant access to freebies, trainings, templates, workshops, and more, be sure to go to meganmins.com right now. I'll see you in the next episode.